A black honors student is handcuffed in front of his classmates for hacking the school Wi-Fi, even though he was trying to fix it. The principal calls the police before calling his parents. Cameras are rolling. One teacher whispers, "He was always too smart for his own good." But when the footage leaks, the real story behind the arrest explodes. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. Elijah Carr was only 8 years old when he learned that brilliance in a black body came with a penalty. His first day at Marlow Creek Academy, a polished private school nestled in a wealthy white suburb of Georgia, began like any child's dream. The school was a castle of glass and brick, where fountains danced in the courtyard and trophies glimmered inside high-gloss display cases. Elijah, dressed in his crisp blue blazer and neatly parted curls, walked into the school holding his mother's hand, his eyes lit with excitement and curiosity. The first classroom he entered smelled of lemon cleaner and expensive paper. Rows of desks sat beneath a giant whiteboard, and the windows stretched so tall the sunlight felt like it was applauding. But even before Elijah sat down, he noticed something. Eyes. Watching. Measuring. His skin was the only deep brown among rows of pale faces. "You must be Elijah," the teacher, Mrs. Verne, said with a tight smile. Her voice was polished, each syllable clean, but Elijah sensed a hesitation. She gestured to an empty seat in the back. His mother bent down and kissed him on the forehead. "Show them what you can do," she whispered. He did. And that was the problem. By the second week, Elijah had solved a math problem aloud that the rest of the class was still trying to grasp. He explained fractions using a metaphor involving pizza and music notes. When Miss Verne asked how he knew such concepts, Elijah answered honestly, "My dad teaches me logic puzzles before bed." She stared at him for a beat too long. Then a soft chuckle. "Well, let's not confuse the others," she said, and told him to sit down. It became a pattern. Every time Elijah showed initiative or insight, he was told to quiet down. During a science presentation, he brought in a homemade volcano that actually simulated pressure using baking soda chambers. The class clapped, but Mrs. Verne frowned. "That wasn't the assignment," she said. "You went too far." The phrase "too much" began to follow Elijah like a shadow. Too loud. Too smart. Too intense. When a white boy named Carter mimicked Elijah's volcano the next week, even using less innovation, he was praised for being curious and inventive. Elijah watched quietly, understanding something no 8-year-old should need to understand. Some brilliance is welcomed. His wasn't. At home, Elijah tried to explain it. His mother, Elijah Carr, a software engineer, and his father, Vincent, a former Navy linguist, listened carefully. Tamara paced the kitchen as he recounted the incidents. "It's not just about being the only black kid," she murmured. "It's about the threat they feel when he outshines their own." Vincent leaned on the counter, his jaw tight. "We'll speak to the school." But Marlow Creek had its defense ready. When the Carrs met with the principal, Mrs. Holloway, she smiled politely and slid a folder across the table. "We've had multiple behavioral complaints," she said. Inside the folder were incident reports. Elijah had interrupted instruction. He had talked over peers. He had been disrespectful by correcting a teacher's math error on the board. "He's 8, Tamara said, her voice shaking. "He's gifted," Vincent added. "He's disruptive," Mrs. Holloway replied. And then the sentence that hardened the air in the room. "Giftedness does not excuse poor classroom behavior." From then on, Elijah began shrinking. At least at school. He stopped raising his hand. He turned in perfect homework quietly. He read books under his desk while the class reviewed simple multiplication. But inside, his ideas pulsed, urgent and alive. At night, he wrote inventions in his notebook. Things he wanted to build, systems he wanted to create. Dreams too large for desks. In 5th grade, a substitute teacher noticed Elijah's notes during recess. She picked up his notebook, flipped through it, and raised her eyebrows. "You think you can build a language translator?" she asked. "That's ambitious." The word landed like a slap. "Why not?" Elijah asked. She stared at him, then set the notebook down. "Sit down, Elijah." By middle school, Elijah stopped expecting praise. He was placed in a generic math track, despite scoring in the top percentile nationally. His classmates mocked his diction, calling him Professor and Elijah Einstein. The school counselor suggested he focus on emotional intelligence instead of academic excellence. "Leadership comes in many forms, she said with a smile that didn't touch her eyes. At a school science fair in 7th grade, Elijah presented a prototype for an app that could predict flooding patterns using weather data. It worked. It was original. It was too much. The judges gave the top prize to a student who had recreated a baking soda volcano. Elijah's parents fought again. They sent emails, scheduled meetings. Nothing changed. But something else happened that year. One night, Elijah stumbled upon an online flyer for a National Junior Science Challenge, sponsored by the Edison Research Foundation. Open to all middle school students nationwide. No school sponsorship needed. Projects judged anonymously. Winner gets $10,000 and a meeting with a national science judge. The rules said nothing about fitting in. He entered. Late nights, secret builds, YouTube tutorials, Arduino kits ordered with his birthday money. He rebuilt his flood prediction app, made it smarter, sleeker, intuitive. He submitted his entry with shaking hands. Weeks passed. Then the email came. Subject finalist confirmation. Elijah stared at the screen. He was in. The competition would be held in Atlanta. Only 2 hours away. His parents cried. Elijah smiled for the first time in months. This time, there would be no teachers telling him to be quiet. Or so he thought. When he arrived at the venue, he wore a suit and tie. The other students wore hoodies. He stood tall, beside his display. As the judges walked by, he explained his model with precision and passion. One judge, a gray-haired man in a blazer, leaned in, asked pointed questions. Elijah answered every one. The man looked over his notes. "Where did you get this code?" he asked. "I wrote it," Elijah said. The judge paused. "Interesting." He turned to leave. Elijah saw the doubt in his eyes. Minutes later, Elijah overheard 2 judges whispering. No way he built that alone. His palms went cold, his knees locked. And then, the head judge stood on stage. "We'd like to recognize one standout project. The flood prediction model by Elijah Carr." The crowd applauded. Elijah took the stage. But the judge who doubted him stepped forward. His voice cut through the microphone. "Elijah, can you solve this equation in real time?" He scribbled a complex formula on the board behind them. The room went still. And in that moment, the boy who had been told to sit down stood taller than ever before, as the room held its breath, waiting to see if he would rise or fall. The auditorium's silence still echoed inside Elijah long after he solved the equation on stage. The adults hadn't clapped. They had stared, their faces caught between admiration and unease, as if they had just witnessed something they weren't sure was allowed. That feeling followed him into Monday morning, when he returned to Marlow Creek Academy. The hallways felt colder. Students whispered when he passed, not with pride, but discomfort. Even teachers looked at him a second too long, as if recalculating who he was supposed to be. The school broadcast mentioned the junior competition winner, but not him. "A student from our academy participated," the announcer said vaguely. Elijah sat at his desk and watched the announcement fade on the screen, feeling the injustice sink into him with a weight he hadn't expected. It wasn't that he wanted fame. It was that he wanted the truth. But the truth seemed unwelcome here. On Tuesday, Marlow Creek hosted Professor Arnold, a visiting mathematician known for making math fun. He scribbled a calculus-level limit problem on the board, explaining that no one needed to solve it. It was just to appreciate the beauty of advanced concepts. Elijah saw the steps instantly. His pencil moved in instinctive confidence. When the professor asked if anyone wanted to guess the answer, Elijah raised his hand carefully. His solution was clear, logical, and correct, but the room fell silent afterward. The professor stared, surprised. Mrs. Keller, his white homeroom teacher, stiffened. The professor murmured, "You didn't mention a calculus student," and Mrs. Keller replied, "We don't have one." When Elijah quietly explained that he had only answered the question he was asked, Mrs. Keller ordered him into the hallway. What followed was a scolding that stung deeper than any punishment he'd ever known. "You embarrassed our guest," she said. "You always push too far. You need humility." Humility, his new punishment for being gifted. When his parents heard, they were furious. They requested a meeting with the school. In a conference room that smelled of lavender and polished wood, Principal Holloway calmly explained that Elijah needed behavioral intervention, not celebration. His parents argued passionately, but the principal insisted on a compliance-first approach. Compliance, that was the word that clung to Elijah like a chain. It meant shrinking himself so others felt comfortable. It meant pretending he didn't understand things he actually did. It meant silence, not excellence. During the school's collaborative learning week, Elijah was forced into a group with classmates who didn't want him there. He suggested building an automated greenhouse, but the others insisted on a simple baking soda volcano like everyone else. When he tried again, proposing moisture sensors, they shut him down. Their project was sloppy and unfinished, but Mrs. Keller gave the group a low grade and wrote that Elijah struggles with teamwork. He brought the paper home and placed it silently on the table, watching his mother close her eyes in pain and his father stare at the grade as though it were a bruise on their son. This hurt worse than anything teachers said. But that evening, as though the universe owed him a breath of relief, a thick envelope arrived bearing gold lettering. Elijah tore it open and read slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. He had been invited to the Southeastern Regional STEM exhibition, one of the most prestigious showcases in the region. His parents celebrated, his father lifting him into a rare, tight embrace. Elijah felt hope bloom in his chest again. The school only needed to endorse his participation and help with partial sponsorship. Surely they would support a student representing them at such a high level. The next morning, he handed the invitation to Principal Holloway. She congratulated him politely, but her face never warmed. "The school cannot support this," she said. Elijah blinked, stunned. "Why not?" Her response was sharp and rehearsed. "It would be counterproductive given your recent behavioral concerns. Excellence must align with humility." Mrs. Keller added, almost sweetly, "Maybe next year, once you've matured." The despair that washed over Elijah was so strong he felt his legs weaken. They weren't just refusing to help him, they were trying to keep him small. That night at home, his parents sat in heavy silence. His mother whispered, "They're punishing you for being gifted," while his father said, "They don't want the world to see what they've tried to hide." Elijah didn't speak. He didn't need to. The truth was already inside him. He wasn't simply unwelcome. He was unwanted in spaces where brilliance wasn't expected to come from someone like him. Just as the house settled into its nighttime stillness, the doorbell rang again. Another envelope, this one bearing the embossed seal of the STEM Regional Board. Elijah opened it with trembling fingers. Inside, a letter read, "We have been informed of the school's refusal. We would like to speak with you privately regarding your participation." Elijah stared at the letter, realizing someone somewhere had been watching him closer than he ever imagined. And they weren't done with him yet. Elijah never forgot the voice on the phone. Calm, professional, and unlike any teacher or administrator he had ever spoken to. "We reviewed your work, Elijah," said the woman from the STEM Regional Board. "We've made a rare exception. Since your school declined to sponsor you, we'd still like you to attend, as an independent participant." He had to read the email 3 times before it sank in. No school banner, no Marlow Creek mention, just him. Elijah Carr, independent. The word tasted like defiance. The exhibition took place inside the downtown convention center, a cathedral of steel and lights, where the air buzzed with electricity and ambition. Booths lined the enormous hall, decorated with student posters, diagrams, tech prototypes. Parents hovered, cameras flashed. Elijah walked through the entrance alone, dressed in his best shirt and tie, carrying his project under one arm, and a quiet fire in his chest. When he reached his table, booth 116, he set up his model. It was better than before. Cleaner interface, smarter analytics. His flood prediction app now used machine learning to adapt in real time, predicting not just flooding but disaster patterns by zip code. A group of graduate students from Georgia Tech stopped by and asked questions. Elijah answered all of them, confidently, calmly. Some took note. But then came the first shift. A middle-aged judge approached and asked where he attended school. Elijah explained he was participating independently. The judge's eyes narrowed. "No school?" he asked again, slower this time. "No sponsorship," Elijah said. "I came on my own." The judge nodded, but the interest had already dimmed. He made no comment about the project itself, just moved on. Later, during the preliminary evaluations, Elijah overheard another judge near the coffee station say, "The Carr kids' presentation is impressive, but it seems too advanced. I'd be curious to know who helped him." Elijah pretended not to hear it. He stayed focused, professionally polite, and answered every question as the day continued. But inside, it was happening again. That gnawing sense that his intelligence wasn't being seen. It was being interrogated. By the afternoon, local news crews arrived. They set up tripods and ring lights, interviewing standout students and judges. Elijah stood patiently near his booth, watching. A girl with a color-coded volcano made of foam and glitter had already been interviewed twice. A boy who built a solar oven from a pizza box was surrounded by microphones. Nobody came to Elijah's table. Eventually, he approached one of the reporters himself. "Excuse me," he said. "Would you be interested in hearing about flood prediction modeling?" The reporter glanced at him, then at her clipboard. "What school are you with?"
No school. I'm independent.
She smiled thinly. "We're mostly covering district-sponsored entries today." She turned and waved down another student in a bright yellow school jersey. Elijah stood still for a long moment, the noise of the room dimming behind his frustration. He looked around and saw it clearly. The pattern wasn't random. Every student being filmed was white. Every approved project featured a smiling teacher nearby. There were better projects in the room, but they weren't being broadcast. Then something stranger happened. When Elijah returned to his booth after a bathroom break, he noticed his display had been moved. The monitor was shifted. His name tag was gone. Someone had unplugged his tablet. He asked an event volunteer what happened. "We had to make some space," she said vaguely. "Your booth was taking up more than its allocated table width." He checked the measurements. It wasn't, but arguing would waste energy. So he quietly set it all back up, again reattached his sign, and pressed on. That night, Elijah and his parents scoured the event's official webpage for published video entries. Each participant had submitted a 3-minute demo clip, but Elijah's video, which he uploaded weeks prior, was missing. Every other video was there. He emailed the event's tech contact. No response. He checked again. The next morning. Still gone. His father called the organizer directly. "There must be a mistake," Vincent said firmly. "My son's entry is not showing." The woman on the phone sounded apologetic but distracted. "Let me check. We have no video file logged under his name. Are you sure it uploaded correctly?" "Yes," Elijah said, listening in. "I got the confirmation screen." "Well, it must have failed to process," she said. "Unfortunately, the window for resubmissions is closed." Click. Elijah sat on the living room couch, his body rigid. First the sponsor, now the footage. It was erasure by 1,000 cuts. Not aggressive, just subtle enough to pass as administrative error. But he knew better. The worst part wasn't what they said. It was what they refused to say. At school the following Monday, his classmates snickered in whispers. Someone had created a fake meme account online with his face photoshopped onto a robot. The caption read, "EA, emotionless little intelligent experiment." He recognized the handle that shared it first. A student from his advisory class. He reported it. The school did nothing. When he confronted one of the kids who shared it, they just smirked. "I thought you'd be too smart to care what we think." A week later, a substitute teacher, a new face he hadn't seen before, handed back Elijah's math quiz, smirking as she said, "Surprised you didn't ace this. I heard you were some kind of prodigy." The paper had a B-, but Elijah knew he had gotten every question right. He checked the problems. She had marked one answer wrong, even though it was technically correct, just solved with a more advanced method. He went to the principal. Mrs. Holloway wasn't in. Her secretary said, "The teacher is temporary. Let's just let it go." By that weekend, Elijah's inbox was full of silence. No follow-ups from the STEM board. No comments on his submission. No messages from judges. No emails from the media. He had been brilliant and forgotten. Until a message appeared. It came through the website he'd used to post his project code. An anonymous user named Delta Vortex had left a comment. "They fear what they can't control. You want to weigh in? I have one. No school. No judges. Just pure competition." Attached was a link. Private. Encrypted. Invite-only coding arena. A dark interface. Challenge posted weekly. No names. Just skills. Elijah blinked. His hands hovered over the keys. A second message appeared. "You're not alone, but you can't win their game, playing by their rules." He clicked. As the screen loaded a live code simulation, Elijah realized this wasn't just an invitation, it was an underground revolution, and he had just been recruited. The first time Elijah opened the encrypted portal, it felt like stepping into a world built for ghosts. There was no flashy login, no cartoon avatars or welcome banners, Just code. A pulsing black screen, with one line of white text. Welcome to Arena Null. Enter or vanish. Elijah typed his alias carefully, EC Black, and hit return. The name was deliberate. EC for Elijah Carr. Black because that was the part of him they always tried to erase. It was a shield and a sword. If they couldn't accept his genius in his skin, then he would make them worship it, in anonymity. Arena Null wasn't just some hobbyist site, it was an underground AI coding league, rumored to be monitored by recruiters from Silicon Valley, DARPA, even foreign agencies. Each week, it released problems that stumped even senior engineers. Membership was invitation only, and thanks to Delta Vortex, the stranger who contacted him after the STEM disaster, Elijah had a seat at the table. He didn't waste it. The first challenge was to design a generative AI model that could identify facial expressions from raw pixel data, even in poor lighting. Elijah worked quietly at night, when his parents were asleep. By 3 years, his model not only recognized expressions but corrected for bias using statistical parity filters he'd developed on his own. He posted it under his alias and closed his laptop, heart pounding. Within hours, the leaderboard lit up. EC Black, first place. On the Arena Null forums, the comments exploded. Who the hell is this guy? Never seen this alias before. This code reads like poetry. But Elijah didn't reply. He simply opened the next challenge. Week after week, he dominated. A natural language compression task, a game theory optimization test, a deepfake detection algorithm. He crushed each one. Users speculated wildly. Some thought EC Black was a Google engineer moonlighting. After hours, others joked he was an AI himself. Then came the announcement. The Omega Equation. A theoretical AI construct developed 20 years ago by a Stanford research team. Unsolved. Abandoned. It aimed to model emergent consciousness through recursive self-prioritization. For decades it had stumped PhDs in national labs. Arena Null posed it as the final challenge of the year. Whoever solved it would win access to a private summit hosted by the startup Mindforge, one of Silicon Valley's fastest-growing AI firms. Elijah stared at the screen. This wasn't just a challenge. It was a door. He studied the equation for days. Not just the math, the logic, the structure, the assumptions. It wasn't broken. It was framed wrong. Everyone had tried to solve it forward. Elijah flipped it, started backward. Let the outcome define the path. He filled 3 notebooks. Built simulation after simulation. Then one night, it clicked. He wasn't solving for AI behavior. He was solving for digital intent. A recursive priority system that could self-modify based on moral alignment parameters. He coded for 10 hours straight, not even pausing for water. When he finally hit submit, he collapsed on his bed, fingers trembling. The result came 12 hours later. EC Black, only submission. Status solved. Arena Null forums erupted. A verified Mindforge admin posted publicly. We've reviewed the solution. It's not only correct, it advances the equation by introducing a stability framework we'd never imagined. We want to meet EC Black. The invitation was direct. A closed summit in Palo Alto. Expenses covered. Private sessions with the top AI thinkers in the world. Elijah froze. He couldn't go as himself. His parents were stunned when he finally told them. Vincent paced the living room while Tamara stared at the printout. So let me get this straight, Vincent said. You've been entering an underground AI league under a fake name, and now you've been invited to a private event in California? Yes, Elijah said quietly. And they think I'm someone else. Someone older. Someone white. Tamara didn't speak for a moment. Then, we should talk to someone. That's when Dr. Harmon entered the picture. Tamara had once interned under her Dr. Loretta Harmon, a former NASA systems engineer, who now mentored underrepresented STEM youth. She came to their house the next week, silver dreadlocks tied neatly, a presence that balanced grace and sharpness. I've read your code, she told Elijah. You have a gift I haven't seen in 20 years. But if you walk into that summit as a 14-year-old black kid from Georgia, they'll dismiss you before you finish your first sentence. So I lie? Elijah asked. No, Dr. Harmon said. You control the reveal. You go as yourself. But not all at once. Together they prepared. Dr. Harmon became his temporary guardian for the trip. Tamara and Vincent worked through logistics. Elijah updated his portfolio. The invitation required video verification before final registration. Dr. Harmon recorded it herself, No background, no face, just Elijah's voice, walking through his methodology. It was sent, approved. The ticket came the next day. They flew out under the radar. At the summit, Elijah was introduced to the group as EC Black. No one questioned his age at first. He wore a tailored jacket, spoke with confidence. The attendees were too dazzled by his output. During the closed session, he presented his solution to the Omega equation in front of 30 of the world's top engineers. The room went silent. Then applause. Real applause. One of the MindForge execs walked up after the session. EC, we need to put you on camera. The world has to see this. Elijah hesitated. Is that required? It's standard protocol for all winners. Press package. Publicity. Dr. Harmon stepped forward. We'll discuss it. They stepped outside. Elijah felt the world tightening again. This was his moment. But was he ready for them to see the face behind the math? Dr. Harmon looked at him. Calm but firm. Once they know who you are, there's no going back. But maybe that's exactly what they need. As the media team set up cameras inside, Elijah took a deep breath and stepped forward, knowing the reveal could either change everything or destroy the one chance he'd ever had. The soft hum of voices carried through the MindForge event hall as Elijah Carr stepped into the lobby, where glossy floors reflected the spill of stage lights and polished shoes. Screens along the walls replayed clips of brilliant code demonstrations, neural net visualizations, and congratulatory announcements. The summit was more than a competition. It was a ceremony of intellect, a ritual where genius was expected to look a certain way: older, paler, usually male, usually from the elite pockets of Silicon Valley. Elijah stood in the doorway, his hands slightly trembling, though his face remained steady. Dr. Harmon offered a firm nod, her voice low. Whatever happens in there, you walk in as the mind that solved the Omega equation. Nobody can take that from you. He inhaled deeply and entered. The room, wide, modern, framed with glass walls, went still the moment they crossed the threshold. Conversations froze. Lecturers mid-sentence paused. Investors stopped clinking glasses. The stage lights reflected off dozens of faces, turning in slow, synchronized confusion. It was as though a silent alarm had gone off, invisible but undeniable. A black teenage boy had entered their sanctum. A woman near the front lowered her tablet. A man with a badge labeled Chief Research Officer glanced at Elijah, then at Dr. Harmon, then back at Elijah, his confusion barely contained. A pair of young engineers exchanged looks that were less curious and more incredulous. It wasn't hostility at first, just disbelief. But disbelief has sharp edges. Elijah felt each stare like a weight against his shoulders, pressing gently but constantly, the way a hand might press on a lid it didn't want opened. Finally, the lead judge, a tall man with silver hair, expensive glasses, and the unmistakable aura of authority, stepped forward. His smile was polite but shallow, the kind reserved for awkward introductions. "Hello," he said slowly, as if approaching a skittish animal. "Are you here on behalf of EC Black?" His tone carried an expectation. Elijah would say yes, apologize for the confusion, and clarify he was delivering a message from the real winner. Someone credible, someone older. Elijah kept his head high. "I am EC Black." The room didn't just go quiet, it collapsed into silence. A stunned, suffocating silence, thick enough to be touched. Someone near the back actually laughed. A short, confused burst. A few others joined with that strange kind of nervous, disbelieving chuckle people make when reality betrays their expectations. The laughter wasn't directed with him, it was directed at the impossibility of him. One engineer murmured under his breath, "Is this a joke?" Another whispered, "He's a kid, he can't be." But Elijah didn't fidget. He didn't shrink. He had rehearsed this moment in the mirror of his hotel room a dozen times. The lead judge blinked twice, processing. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" Elijah repeated it, his voice level, practiced, steady. "I am EC Black. I wrote the solution." More murmurs. A few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats, as though witnessing something inappropriate. The lead judge glanced at Dr. Harmon, looking for an explanation. She folded her arms, expression unreadable. "He's exactly who he says he is," she said, "and I suggest you treat him as such." A cameraman, one who had been adjusting equipment on the side of the room, raised his camera instinctively, sensing the shift in energy. Another joined. Soon, the stage was flooded with more lenses than Elijah expected. Cameras flashed, but not with celebration. With skepticism, one reporter stepped forward, microphone in hand. We were told E.C. Black was a groundbreaking new voice in AI theory. How long have you been studying artificial intelligence? Elijah, was it? Since I was 8, he said plainly. Another reporter inserted, and you're how old now? 14. A wave of half-suppressed gasps rolled across the room. Some people exchanged baffled glances. Others stared with furrowed brows, their faces tightening with irritation that didn't belong in a celebration. The lead judge forced a smile, but it wavered. Well, this is highly unexpected. Elijah lifted his chin. Genius doesn't need to be expected. That sentence hung in the air, sharp and quiet. A woman in a tailored white suit stepped forward, her voice low but firm. We will need to verify that you truly authored the solution. Dr. Harmon stepped in. He already submitted video verification. Yes, the woman said, but anonymously, without showing his identity. That was intentional, Dr. Harmon said smoothly, and approved. The woman hesitated, caught between policy and prejudice. Still, given the circumstances, Elijah finished her thought for her, his voice calm. Given my age, and my race, the woman froze. The room froze. He had said it out loud. Dr. Harmon rested a gentle but firm hand on his shoulder. If you test him the way you'd test anyone else. Not harder, not softer. The lead judge cleared his throat loudly. Let's proceed with the award ceremony. Elijah followed Dr. Harmon to the stage. Every step felt heavier than the one before it. The applause, when it came, was hesitant, scattered, uneven, as if the crowd wasn't sure whether to clap or question. He received the plaque for unprecedented theoretical breakthrough. Omega equation. When he held it, its weight felt real, earned. But the space around him vibrated with discomfort. The applause faded faster than it should have. He stood there, holding the plaque, hearing whispers bleed into the silence. How is he even allowed to compete? It's probably a fluke. Maybe he memorized someone's work. He doesn't look like a mind-forged type. He doesn't look like an engineer at all. Dr. Harmon heard every word. Elijah did too. But he didn't flinch. He locked his expression in place. The stage lights burned bright on his face. But they also illuminated every assumption in the room. It was the same story he had lived since childhood. His intelligence only made sense to people if it belonged to someone else. The ceremony ended, and the audience began to disperse. Some approached him with genuine curiosity. A few asked for photos, but others walked around him like he was an inconvenience that interrupted their expectations. A pair of tech investors approached Dr. Harmon, ignoring Elijah entirely. Impressive presentation, one said, but for a summit of this scale, perhaps anonymity should be discouraged. It creates awkward moments. Dr. Harmon stared coldly. The only awkwardness I see is the kind manufactured by bias. The men excused themselves quickly. Elijah turned away, exhaling slowly. His fingers tightened on the plaque. It doesn't matter, he whispered. They saw the math. They can't unsee that. Dr. Harmon nodded. But some will try. They left the building together, walking toward the parking lot under a crisp California sky. For a moment, Elijah felt a flicker of hope. He had solved something unsolvable. He had stood in a room full of people who thought they understood intelligence, and forced them to redefine it. But the world always found a way to remind him he was not allowed to shine too long. It happened an hour later, when Dr. Harmon opened her phone to a flood of notifications. Elijah, she whispered. He looked over her shoulder. A tech blog had already uploaded the recording of the reveal, and the headline punched him in the chest like a fist. Black kid crashes tech event, claims victory. Elijah stared at the headline as the comments section began to explode, realizing this was only the beginning of a storm he never agreed to weather. The headline spread like gasoline on open flame. By the time Elijah and Dr. Harmon reached the car, the tech blog's article had been reposted thousands of times. Black kid crashes tech event, claims victory wasn't just a headline. It was a grenade tossed into a room already filled with prejudice. Inside the car, the glow of Dr. Harmon's phone reflected the rapid escalation. Notifications exploded across the screen. Tweets, threads, reaction clips, hashtags, opinion pieces, and venom. The silence between them was heavy, stretched so tight it could snap. Elijah, she said softly, her thumb scrolling fast. It's everywhere. Elijah leaned over, reading headlines like bullets. Teen fraud, MindForge winner exposed after suspicious reveal. Then another. Is EC Black a fake identity? And one that made his stomach turn. Diversity stunt backfires as kid claims solving AI's hardest equation. Every article twisted the story, focused not on the math, not on the merit, but on him, what he looked like, where he came from, what he wasn't supposed to be. His phone buzzed uncontrollably. He hesitated, then unlocked it. Direct messages swarmed his inbox. Strangers demanded explanations. Some praised him, many mocked him. The livestream clip of him declaring, "I am EC Black," had already gone viral, but not as a triumph. Users cut the video, inserted laugh tracks, overlaid mocking text. When you lie on your resume, when the student thinks he's smarter than the professor. Minority math magic. The internet wasn't debating the code, it was debating his existence. The memes came next. His face pasted onto cartoons of babies in lab coats. His image compared to fictional characters like Doogie Howser, but with captions dripping sarcasm. His name, Elijah Carr, trended next to hashtags like tech hoax and fake genius. Dr. Harmon turned off her phone. "Don't read anymore," she said. But it was too late. Elijah had already absorbed the tone, the rage, the manufactured controversy. It wasn't confusion. It was a targeted campaign to destroy what they didn't want to believe. At the airport, people stared. A few students giggled behind their phones. One pointed his camera directly at Elijah and said to his friend, "That's the kid, the math liar." Another mumbled that he had a team do it for him. Elijah said nothing. He kept walking, his shoes quiet on the polished floor, shoulders squared as if trying to carry something no one else could see. When they landed back in Georgia, his parents were waiting at the terminal. Tamara pulled him into her arms, too shaken to speak. Vincent's phone buzzed constantly as he skimmed more posts, more noise. "They're calling him a fraud," he muttered. "They're dissecting everything. His background, his school, even our house." The words stung, but Elijah was numb. The world had shifted, and it had decided he didn't belong in the very space he had conquered. At home, things got worse. Their neighbors stared when they pulled into the driveway. A few peeked from behind curtains. One man on the corner folded his arms and just watched. Elijah's heart sank when he saw what was taped to their front door. A printed screenshot of the original headline, circled in red ink, the word "black" underlined. Someone had turned it into a warning. The next day at school, the damage followed him inside. Students crowded the hallway, not to greet him, but to watch. Their gazes weren't filled with awe. They were filled with cruelty, confusion, and suspicion. A group of boys from his history class stood near his locker, laughing. "There he is, Mr. Algorithm." Another one added, "So what's next? Hacking the Pentagon?" Elijah tried to ignore them, but the barbs kept coming. "He's probably got Elon Musk on speed dial." No teacher intervened. No one told them to stop. By midday, the school gates were surrounded by protesters. Grown adults, holding signs, shouting into bullhorns. "Stop the lie. We deserve real geniuses. Expose the tech fraud." Some of them wore matching t-shirts with his face crossed out in red. The school went into soft lockdown. Teachers closed blinds. The administration went silent. That afternoon, Tamara and Vincent were summoned to a meeting with the principal. Mrs. Holloway offered her usual polite, practiced smile. "We want Elijah to feel safe," she began. "But the media attention is affecting our academic environment." Tamara's fists clenched. "What are you saying?" Mrs. Holloway folded her hands neatly. "We believe a short leave of absence might be beneficial, just until things quiet down." Vincent leaned forward. "You want him to vanish so you don't have to deal with the pressure." "We want to protect him," the principal insisted. "A cooling-off period is standard in high-profile disruptions." Elijah, sitting silently until now, finally looked up. "I'm not the disruption," he said. "I'm the target." Mrs. Holloway's tone turned colder. Anonymity created distrust. "Elijah, people feel deceived." "That's their problem," Tamara snapped. The principal sighed. "Our recommendation stands." The Carrs left the meeting without a word. Outside, Elijah's phone buzzed again. This time it was worse. Someone had doxed them. Their home address, Tamara's private email, Vincent's employer, all posted online. Beneath it, thousands of comments piled up. "Make him pay. Let's visit the prodigy in person. Hope he knows we're watching." That night, Squad cars circled the block. Tamara unplugged every smart device. Vincent changed all their passwords, and Elijah sat on the edge of his bed, the Omega equation plaque still resting on his desk, its gold engraving dulled by the shadows around it. What was once a symbol of triumph now looked like a bullseye. Tamara peeked into his room. "We can lay low, baby. We don't have to respond. Let this storm pass." Elijah didn't look at her. "Storms don't pass. They follow me." Then a message appeared on his phone. An unknown number. No name. Just one line of text. "Back off, or we'll bury you." His fingers trembled. Then another message followed. "This is your only warning." Elijah's face went pale. He turned his phone to show his parents. Vincent took it immediately, trying to trace the number. But something about the phrasing, the tone, it wasn't some internet troll. It was clean, deliberate, corporate. Elijah stared at the screen, realizing the voice behind the threat wasn't just anonymous. It belonged to a powerful Silicon Valley investor with the power to make good on it. The house was silent the next morning when Dr. Harmon returned, except for the faint hum of a refrigerator and the occasional vibration of Elijah's phone. She walked in with a folder tucked under her arm. No label, no logo, just a black seal stamped in wax across the flap. Elijah sat at the dining table, his laptop open but untouched. Tamara paced by the window, eyes red from sleeplessness. Vincent was on hold with a cybersecurity firm, still trying to trace the threat Elijah had received the night before. Dr. Harmon sat down slowly, laying the folder between them like a detonator. "We have a problem," she said quietly. Elijah looked up, already feeling it in his chest. "The Omega equation," she began, "wasn't just theoretical. At least not anymore. It turns out the construct you solved was repurchased 2 years ago by a private defense contractor. They've been quietly modifying it for military-grade intelligence systems." Tamara's brow furrowed, but it was open source. Anyone could access it. Dr. Harmon nodded grimly. "That's exactly why they let it stay public, to observe who could make sense of it. It was a honeypot. Elijah, you didn't just solve a hard problem. You cracked through a classified firewall built into the equation. A firewall they didn't expect anyone outside their circle to even recognize." Vincent's posture stiffened. "So our son stumbled into a government trap?" "He didn't stumble," she said. "He saw the math clearly. What they didn't count on was someone outside the defense sector being capable of understanding it." Elijah's voice was soft. "So, that message I got. The threat. It wasn't some troll." Dr. Harmon leaned forward. "No, that was a warning. From someone who now considers you a liability, because you made them look vulnerable." The words didn't sink in immediately, but when they did, they left a silence so sharp it could slice skin. Tamara finally broke it. "We need protection." Vincent nodded. "And a lawyer. We also need press," Dr. Harmon added. "You need to get your story out before they spin it, because right now they're already trying." She wasn't wrong. News outlets had begun twisting the narrative within hours. What had started as debate over a boy genius had metastasized into something darker. Some blogs speculated he'd been coached. Others claimed MindForge staged the solution for publicity. Conservative platforms painted Elijah as a plant, a token genius used for corporate diversity optics. Some even claimed the Omega equation had never been solved, calling it woke propaganda. And through it all, no one was talking about the math. That afternoon, Principal Holloway called. Her voice was calm, too calm. "We've reviewed the recent developments," she began, "and in light of potential security concerns and national exposure, we're recommending Elijah take an indefinite leave from school." Tamara's voice sharpened. "That's not your call. It becomes our call," Holloway said, "when we can no longer ensure the safety of other students. Your son's presence has become a risk." Vincent stood, pacing. "They're saying he's dangerous now?" "Not directly," Holloway said smoothly. "But as an institution, we have to act preemptively." From the kitchen, Elijah heard every word. It didn't even sting anymore. It just confirmed what he already knew, that brilliance in his skin, his age, his tone, would never be protected, only managed. The school wanted him out. The public wanted him buried. The tech world wanted him silent. And then it got worse. That evening, just before dinner, someone knocked. Vincent opened the door to find a man in a tailored gray suit, standing on the porch. No badge, no smile, no name. He handed Vincent a sealed envelope. "What is this?" Vincent asked. The man didn't answer. He turned, walked away, and disappeared into a black SUV. Inside the envelope was a cease and desist order, a thinly veiled threat dressed in legal terms. It warned Elijah and his family against conducting interviews, giving statements, or publicly discussing the Omega equation. No sender was listed, but faintly embossed in the corner was a single name: GDI Industries. Dr. Harmon's face darkened. They build cyber weapons for private and government clients. I've heard rumors they fund predictive policing systems. If GDI's behind this, it means they're scared, and they're preparing to shut him down. Tamara collapsed into a chair, breath shaking. They want to erase him. Elijah remained frozen, staring at the letter. Its language was cold, clinical, final. It wasn't a cease and desist. It was a threat disguised as formality. He thought back to every classroom where he was told to lower his hand. Every time a teacher dismissed his questions, or a judge questioned his code, it had always been about control, about keeping the boundary in place between genius and permission. Now that line had cracked, and they weren't just uncomfortable, they were terrified. That night, sleep didn't come. Elijah wandered the hallway like a ghost, past photos of birthdays, honor roll certificates, and crayon drawings from kindergarten. He stopped at one picture he had made when he was 6, a stick figure wearing a lab coat, standing on Mars. The caption, "The first black scientist on another planet." Now they wanted him off the planet entirely. His phone buzzed. Another message. The same anonymous number. But this time it wasn't a threat. "I know what they're doing. I used to work for them. You're not alone. I can prove who started this." No name. No image. Just that message. Attached to it was a single audio file. His hands trembled as he tapped it open. A voice emerged, crackling through the speaker. It was calm, measured, familiar. Too familiar. It was the voice of someone from his childhood, someone who had once told him to sit down. The voice on the recording struck like a lightning bolt from Elijah's past, smooth, practiced, unmistakable. It carried that same veiled authority that once made a child feel small, without raising its volume. "I told them back then," it said, calm as ever. "He'd be trouble if someone didn't put a ceiling on him." The room froze. Tamara slowly turned toward the speaker. Eyes wide. Vincent sat forward, his hands clenched. Dr. Harmon stood still, waiting for the truth to finish unfolding. Elijah couldn't move. He recognized the voice. It was impossible not to. He'd heard it in his nightmares. He'd heard it every time someone questioned whether he was being too loud or trying to show off. Mr. Gerald Crawley, his third-grade math teacher. The man who first told him to sit down. The one who punished him for asking too many questions. The one who made him solve equations privately instead of participating in class. And now, the voice behind the campaign to erase him. The recording continued. "You give a kid like that too much space. He starts thinking he belongs everywhere. Starts thinking rules don't apply. We had to keep expectations realistic." Dr. Harmon finally spoke. He works for GDI now. Public relations and risk management. His job is to spin stories, or destroy them. And right now, he's destroying you. Elijah's breath hitched. He's the one feeding the press. Leaking curated data. Twisting your school records. Offering background to journalists willing to take a certain slant. Dr. Harmon said. And he's not alone. He has internal access. He's not just cleaning up GDI's mess. He's defending their firewall. You solved a problem they didn't want solved. Tamara's voice cracked. That man taught my baby. He looked us in the eye, at parent-teacher meetings, and told us our son had behavioral confidence issues. Vincent's face hardened. He's been watching Elijah's rise all this time, waiting for the right moment to strike. The betrayal settled like ash. Crawley had never been a mentor. He had been a gatekeeper, not there to raise the gifted, but to decide who was allowed to shine. Elijah sat down slowly. He made me doubt myself for years. I thought it was just me. I thought I was being dramatic. You were being targeted, Dr. Harmon said. And now he's trying to finish what he started. That evening, a black envelope arrived via private courier. No sender, no signature. Inside it was a single sheet of thick cream paper with 6 typed words. Let this go. Protect your future. Beneath the note was a check. 100. Enough to buy silence. To erase headlines. To buy time or bury it. Elijah stared at the check. His hands didn't reach for it. They trembled slightly above it. Tamara's nostrils flared. They think we're scared. They think we're small. Vincent's face twisted with disgust. They're calling it protection. It's a bribe. The envelope held more. A dense legal packet detailing non-disclosure agreements, intellectual property waivers, digital silence clauses. It read like a muzzle in legal language. If Elijah signed it, he would be legally forbidden from ever claiming authorship of the Omega equation solution, in any form under any name. And then they saw it, tucked within the legalese on the last page, a line bolded in fine print. This agreement extends to all digital aliases, pseudonyms, or future intellectual property derived from or inspired by the aforementioned code. They didn't just want silence. They wanted ownership of his mind. They want to erase you, Dr. Harmon said. They want the world to forget what you did, and worse, they want the right to use your genius without ever saying your name. Elijah stood up slowly and walked to the window. Outside, the sky was gray, swollen with rain. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he walked back, picked up his phone, opened the voice memo app, and hit record. Tamara blinked. "What are you doing?" Elijah looked up. "I'm not answering them. I'm documenting them." His voice was calm, steady. "My name is Elijah Carr. I'm 14 years old. I solved the Omega equation. GDI Industries offered me $150,000 to never speak again. This is my response." He pressed stop. Later that evening, the phone rang again. Unknown number. Vincent answered and put it on speaker. "Mr. Carr," a voice said. Male. Polished. Unnamed. "We'd like to avoid escalation. This doesn't have to become bigger than it already is." "You threatening my family?" Vincent snapped. "No," the voice replied smoothly. "We're offering closure. We respect your son's potential. But if this continues, that potential may become inaccessible." Tamara stepped forward. "You're threatening a child." "No," said the voice again. "We're offering protection. Some ideas are better left unspoken. Your son isn't the first mind we've handled, but he could be the last if he plays this wrong." Elijah leaned closer. "What happens if I go public?" A pause. Then the voice dropped its mask. "You'll be labeled a fraud, a thief, a risk to national security. Your education will evaporate. Your name will be blacklisted in every engineering program from here to Tokyo, and no one will remember why it started. We control the story." The call disconnected. Elijah's hands were cold, but his eyes burned. He uploaded the audio file of the hush money offer. Then he posted his voice memo to a cloud server. But before he could share it with the world, his browser crashed. His email account signed out. His phone restarted without prompt. A red screen blinked on his laptop. Access denied. Content violation detected. All his files vanished. His name disappeared from the STEM competition's official archive. His student profile was temporarily disabled due to technical review. His history was being wiped in real time. Elijah stared at the screen, realizing they weren't just silencing him, they were erasing him. The audio went live at midnight. Elijah uploaded the files to 3 servers, decentralized, encrypted, mirrored across platforms built to survive takedowns. It didn't matter that he was just 14. His voice, his recordings, his truth, they hit the internet like fire against dry brush. The calls, the legal threats, and most damning of all, Crawley's own voice were undeniable. It wasn't just noise now. It was evident. By dawn, tech forums erupted. Encrypted message boards pieced together GDI's shadowy partnerships. Anonymous users tracked Crawley's LinkedIn history and corporate ties. Whistleblower forums flared to life. And then, as the sun crept into the sky, mainstream media took hold. The truth could no longer be contained. Within 12 hours, the fire Elijah lit reached the nation. Crawley was suspended within a business day. GDI released a cold, calculated statement. "We are aware of recent allegations involving a former employee. These actions do not reflect our values." They called Crawley's behavior unauthorized, then wiped his presence from their website. No apology, no accountability, just digital scrubbing. Cable news anchors suddenly spoke his name, Elijah Carr, but cautiously and not without skepticism. The narrative pivoted from genius kid to PR crisis. Every outlet dissected the scandal, but few centered Elijah's actual achievement. His brilliance was a footnote. The focus now was spin. And then the threats came. The Carr family's front window shattered just after 2 a.m. Tamara woke to the crash, ran to Elijah's room, heart racing. Vincent was already on the phone. The police showed up late and left early, barely taking a statement. Likely vandalism, they said. No suspects, no camera footage. The next morning, red paint covered their garage, 4 thick, angry words. You should have stayed quiet. Tamara's hands shook. She dropped the groceries in the driveway. Vincent pulled her close, eyes scanning the street. Elijah just stared. He didn't cry. He didn't flinch. But something changed in his face. The kind of stillness that comes only when a child realizes safety is no longer guaranteed. They packed that night. A friend of Vincent's, an old college classmate in North Carolina, offered a rental house out of the city. No one else knew the address. They left behind their neighborhood, their school, the Mars drawing Elijah made in kindergarten, the medals, the couch where he solved equations upside down just for fun. Now, they were hidden in plain sight, 3 states away. New phones, a quiet town. But the silence followed. When Tamara went to the store, she felt eyes. A man lingered 2 aisles too long. When Vincent applied for a new job, he made it to the final round, until they ran the background check and ghosted him. Elijah tried logging into his old school email. It had been deactivated, so had his competition profiles, so had the digital footprint of his Mindforge win. The erasure was systematic. Worse than the trolls were the ones who said nothing. Former classmates stopped responding. Teachers he once admired blocked his number. The school district made no public statement. Even Black community leaders, pastors, board members, nonprofits, offered silence. Behind closed doors, some sent quiet prayers, but none stepped forward. The risk was too high. On TV, pundits debated whether Elijah should be punished for digital misconduct. This is what happens when minors play in spaces meant for adults, one panelist said. Another added, he may be brilliant, but was this whistleblowing or manipulation? Dr. Harmon called from a burner number. They're drowning the narrative, she said. Flooding timelines with new scandals. Paying influencers to pivot attention. GDI is smothering your story under noise. And still Elijah said nothing. Until the message came. It was encrypted, verified, traceable to a secure government server. The subject line read, I heard the world ignore you. The sender, Senator Layla Henderson. A quiet but fierce independent voice in the Senate, rarely in headlines, known for backing whistleblowers and tech ethics reform. She didn't ask for a statement. She didn't ask for permission. She made a declaration. I believe you. I want you to testify. Tamara gasped when she read it. Vincent rubbed his temples. She's putting herself on the line. Elijah reread it 3 times, then looked up at his parents. But before they could respond, Elijah's phone buzzed again, a breaking news alert. Senator Layla Henderson facing mounting pressure after contact with teen whistleblower. Security threats increase. GOP calls for censure. Elijah stared at the screen, realizing that anyone who tried to stand beside him might fall first. The Capitol Rotunda had never felt so vast. Elijah stood in front of a curved semicircle of lawmakers, cameras positioned like satellites around his every movement. Microphones sat just inches from his mouth, blinking red, signaling live transmission. The room smelled of oak polish and televised tension. Behind him, his mother sat rigid in the first row. Vincent's hand never left her shoulder. Senator Henderson gave him one final nod. It was time. My name is Elijah Carr, he began, voice steady, eyes forward. I'm 14 years old. I solved the Omega equation. And I'm here today, not because I wanted to be famous, but because I refused to stay invisible. His words echoed across the chamber. Reporters leaned forward. Half the room folded their arms. The other half leaned in. From my first day in school, Elijah continued, I was told that curiosity was a problem, that asking too many questions meant I was disrupting, that showing my work meant I was arrogant. I was 8 years old when I first learned that being smart while black made people uncomfortable. Senator Henderson shifted slightly in her seat. A Republican senator near the end of the row rolled his eyes. I didn't just face racism from students, Elijah said, lifting a sheet of notes with trembling hands. I faced it from teachers, administrators, judges, and even media. The people who were supposed to open doors made sure I couldn't walk through them. He raised his voice slightly. They told me to sit down because they were never ready to see someone like me stand up. A few members of the chamber nodded quietly. Senator Henderson watched him closely. The room had settled into a heavy, attentive stillness. "But here I am," Elijah said, leaning in. "Not because I broke rules, but because I broke through systems built to keep people like me out. I didn't cheat. I didn't lie. I solved the problem they said couldn't be solved. And they punished me for it." Tamara covered her mouth. Vincent blinked away tears. Across the country, live streams exploded. Twitter trending boards lit up. Hashtags like "Jean let Elijah speak," "Shem without bias," and "Jean Black Brilliance," not silence, took over. The testimony lasted just under 8 minutes, but it echoed for days. Elijah answered questions with the same composure he used in coding competitions. He navigated tough inquiries, corrected misstatements, and stood his ground. Even when one lawmaker tried to dismiss his experiences as emotional exaggeration, Elijah calmly cited data about disciplinary disparities, funding gaps, and underrepresentation in gifted programs. "The numbers don't lie," he said, "but the system does." After his testimony, Elijah walked out of the chamber to a quiet hallway. He exhaled for the first time all day. Cameras didn't follow him there, just Dr. Harmon. "You shifted something today," she said. They felt it. For the first time in weeks. Elijah smiled, but the moment didn't last. Later that night, a breaking news alert hit social media like a wrecking ball. A tech blog published a story with a headline designed to destroy "Whiz kid or plagiarist." Anonymous source alleges Elijah stole the Omega solution. As the world celebrates his bravery, a new shadow threatens to pull him back into silence. And this time, it's coming from someone inside the STEM community. It started with a headline designed to sow doubt. "Whiz kid or plagiarist." The article was dressed in credibility, professional layout, embedded charts, and an attached PDF labeled "Academic Integrity Report." Elijah Carr. It claimed that an internal university panel had reviewed Elijah's Omega equation submission and found overwhelming similarities with a theoretical model developed by a now-deceased computer scientist named Colin Bright, a white researcher from MIT, whose archived work was never widely published. Within hours, the post went viral. The language was cold and clinical, intentionally distancing, just enough uncertainty to stall his rising momentum. No proof, just enough speculation. Reddit threads reignited. The same forums that had once crowned Elijah a prodigy now accused him of digital theft. Twitter buzzed with cryptic comments like "genius" or "grifter." News anchors posed the question with forced neutrality. Panelists argued about academic plagiarism without even mentioning race. But the subtext was loud. By nightfall, one of the country's top tech universities, which had offered Elijah an early STEM fellowship, released a carefully worded statement. "In light of emerging concerns regarding academic integrity, we are pausing Elijah Carr's provisional admissions offer pending internal review." Elijah's name was now associated not with brilliance but with dishonor. His phone buzzed, nonstop. Hate mail, threats, speculative messages from journalists, fishing for quotes. Vincent eventually turned the device off and stored it in a drawer. Tamara canceled their internet for the week. They sat together in silence, blinds closed, watching the walls close in again. Even Senator Henderson's office released a tepid, non-committal response. "We support all young voices, and we hope the facts in this case come to light. Until then, we reserve comment." Elijah felt the ground shift beneath him. Not because of what the report said, but because so many were willing to believe it. Then, just 3 days after the story dropped, there was a knock at the door of their temporary rental house. It was Dr. Harmon. She stepped inside, dropped her coat, and pulled a flash drive from her pocket like a dagger. "It's fake," she said. Tamara turned sharply. "The report?" Dr. Harmon nodded. "All of it. The analysis, the charts, the university letterhead. Completely fabricated." Elijah didn't move. He didn't speak. Dr. Harmon opened her laptop, inserted the drive, and walked them through it. "The metadata shows the file was created after your testimony, not weeks before, as they claim. The timestamps are mismatched. But most importantly, the document was traced to a London-based VPN, which was then rerouted through a residential IP in Delaware." Tamara leaned forward. "Who?" Dr. Harmon pulled up a final screen, an email draft saved to a remote server. "The sender, Marcus Linton." The name stopped the room cold. "Judge Linton?" Vincent said. "From the AI competition?" Dr. Harmon nodded grimly. "He was one of the final adjudicators who reviewed your Omega submission. He retired weeks after you won, and joined a private defense consultancy. That firm receives funding from GDI's investor arm. Elijah finally looked up. So they planted this. Dr. Harmon continued. They created a fake trail, sourced it to an obscure researcher no one could defend or refute, and had it pushed through blogs with tech credentials. It was manufactured to discredit you just as public opinion turned in your favor. Tamara stood. We have to respond. Dr. Harmon had already anticipated that. I've assembled a team, she said. Coders, journalists, digital forensics volunteers. We'll build a clean timeline. Show how this entire operation was a setup. Over the next 48 hours, Dr. Harmon's team worked around the clock. They pulled IP logs, tracked suspicious Reddit accounts, cross-verified metadata trails, and discovered that the false plagiarism report had been uploaded to multiple dummy accounts days before being picked up by the blog. It wasn't just an attack, it was a campaign, and it was funded. One of the dummy accounts was traced to a consulting firm owned by none other than the same Silicon Valley investor who had once told Elijah to back off or be buried. The pieces aligned. Smear. Silence. Control. But Elijah didn't flinch. After reviewing the evidence in full, he turned to his parents, calm and certain. We sue.
Vincent hesitated, scanning his son's face. Are you sure?
Elijah nodded. I won't let them rewrite my name again. Dr. Harmon helped prepare the filing. The Carr family secured a civil rights legal team, pro bono, from a firm known for tackling defamation and institutional bias. The suit named the tech blog, the anonymous source now identified as Linton, and the financial entities tied to the fabrication. The claim: defamation, libel, malicious interference with educational opportunity. News of the lawsuit hit headlines just as the smear campaign was peaking. Elijah Carr versus GDI-affiliated investors. A kid against a machine. And then a twist. A federal judge reviewed the complaint and ruled, the case will proceed. Full discovery authorized. It was the first time someone opened a courtroom door for Elijah, not to silence him, but to let him speak. The trial begins, and the first person to testify isn't Elijah. It's a surprise insider witness from GDI itself. The courtroom smelled of wood polish and TV lights. Outside, protesters clutched signs that read, "Let him code," and "Truth over power." News vans clustered at the courthouse steps. Reporters angled for soundbites, and inside packed rows, buzzing tension, and the electric sense that something bigger than a verdict was about to unfold.
Elijah Carr v. Linton & Co. had begun.
Elijah walked in quietly, flanked by his mother, father, and Dr. Harmon. He wore a dark navy blazer, his face unreadable. No cameras caught him smile. He didn't look like a martyr or a tech hero. He looked like a kid who'd run out of places to hide. The defense began with a smooth, surgical strike. The lead attorney addressed the jury with clinical precision. We are not here to vilify genius, he said. We are here to protect the integrity of truth. Mr. Carr is not on trial for his ideas. He is on trial for their origin. Then came the character attacks. They showed out-of-context tweets, screenshots of Elijah's digital journal, where he'd written about feeling hunted, clips of him pacing the hallway at school alone. Each piece was meant to create doubt, to reframe brilliance as instability. Is this the behavior, the lawyer asked, of a stable genius? Tamara reached for Vincent's hand. He was already on his feet, only to be pulled back down gently by their attorney, Mariah Knox. Mariah was a poised, unshakable black attorney, with a calm fire in her voice. She waited until the courtroom settled, then stepped forward. Let's look at the actual record, she said. Not assumptions, not fear, just facts. She projected Elijah's source code across 3 monitors. Each line was time-stamped. The development logs traced back nearly a year. Independent coders confirmed its originality. 2 MIT professors reviewed his logic. And then she played the recordings. The hush money voicemail. The internal Slack chats. The metadata proving forgery. The connection to Judge Linton. It landed like a detonation. The gallery gasped audibly. The jury leaned in. Dr. Harmon took the stand next. She didn't hold back. They erased him, she said, voice clear. Not because he lied, but because he told the truth too early for their comfort. On day 4, it was Elijah's turn. He didn't cry. He didn't tremble. He spoke the way he coded, with structure, clarity, and meaning. I didn't grow up thinking I was dangerous, he said. They taught me that, one silence at a time, one denied opportunity at a time. He explained what it meant to be brilliant and black in spaces designed to exclude him. What it felt like to be dismissed, disbelieved, and discarded for daring to shine. The room held its breath. In closing arguments, Mariah delivered a final strike. This isn't just about one boy. It's about a system that breaks kids like him on purpose. Ask yourselves, if Elijah were white, would this trial even exist? The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the forewoman, an older white woman in a blue cardigan, stood with tears in her eyes. The verdict, in favor of Elijah Carr. Full damages awarded. Official exoneration entered into public record. Tamara gasped and hugged Elijah tightly. Vincent closed his eyes, whispering thanks under his breath. Reporters shouted. Cameras flashed. But Elijah didn't move. He sat in that chair, still silent, like someone who just crawled through fire and reached air. You did it, Vincent whispered. But just as they stood to leave, Dr. Harmon's phone buzzed. She read the message, her face drained of color. Elijah, she said quietly. Linton just filed a countersuit. Elijah blinked. What? He's not taking this to court, she added. This time, he's taking it underground. Just as Elijah wins, the most powerful defendant prepares for revenge. And this time, it won't be legal. The courtroom victory had ended the trial, but not the war. On paper, Elijah had cleared his name. The judge's ruling was airtight, the evidence public, the damages awarded. For a few brief days, the headlines praised his resilience. Hashtags celebrated his name. Profiles dubbed him the future of STEM. But beneath the surface, a different current stirred, one made of silence, shadows, and cold retaliation. The threats returned first. Not the loud kind. Not the ones with masked faces or breaking windows. These were subtle, slippery, crafted for maximum fear with minimal trace. An unmarked envelope appeared on the Carr's doorstep. Inside, a single piece of paper, with Elijah's face, crosshairs drawn over his eyes. Tamara didn't scream. She folded the paper and called Dr. Harmon. The message was logged and destroyed, but it wasn't the only one. That week, Elijah received 3 emails from anonymous accounts. One referenced his middle school. One quoted his TEDx talk. One simply read, "We see you, still." His name was scraped into the side of their family's rental car. His school records were accessed illegally and shared in far-right forums. A blurred photo of him, taken outside a public library, surfaced on a hate site with the caption, "Still walking free." Vincent changed their number. Tamara stopped answering the door, unless she saw 2 patrol cars outside. Their address was rotated through a digital privacy firm, every 36 hours. But no firewall could mask the weight. And yet none of that crushed Elijah more than the silence that followed. 3 top-tier universities that had once fought to recruit him suddenly shifted to vague reassessments. In light of ongoing public scrutiny, our admissions committee has chosen to delay its decision. No action at this time. We're reevaluating the cultural impact of high-profile applicants. No rejection. No acceptance. Just hold. One of the country's largest youth STEM conferences rescinded its invitation for him to speak, citing an evolving speaker lineup. Another organization, which had previously offered him a coding fellowship, now asked if he'd be open to pre-recorded participation only, in order to avoid unnecessary disruption. Dr. Harmon was furious. They want your mind, but not your presence. Elijah didn't flinch. They want my code, not my face. The media softened him into a symbol. Profiles highlighted his tenacity, but stripped out his fire. They quoted him without naming the systems he fought. They centered forgiveness over justice. They liked their black genius inspiring, not angry. Grateful, not confrontational. Neat, not complicated. And Elijah was tired of being edited. So he built something new. On a private server protected by 3 layers of encryption, he launched Code Black, a digital mentorship circle for overlooked gifted black coders. No publicity, no press kits, just code. He selected 10 kids, ages 11 to 16 from across the US, all rejected from advanced placement or STEM competitions. One had been expelled for hacking a school-issued tablet. Another was suspended for defiance after correcting a math teacher in front of the class. They weren't troublemakers. They were visionaries misread as threats. And Elijah met with them every Saturday. They built tools to detect algorithmic bias in facial recognition systems. They developed anti-surveillance programs to help students in over-policed schools mask sensitive search data. They trained small AIs to analyze teacher grading bias patterns. Elijah taught them not just how to code, but how to see the invisible walls and then map escape routes. Each session ended the same way. He'd log off, shut the laptop, and feel both pride and dread. Because while he mentored in shadows, his name was still a target in daylight. A private security detail now shadowed him everywhere. Not the menacing kind, not agents in black suits, but quiet watchers in bookstores, bus terminals, science centers. One accompanied him to the dentist. Another sat 2 rows back at a high school chess invitational he attended just to watch. He hated the weight of it. He hated how it made strangers glance at him twice, how it made librarians shuffle nervously when he walked in wearing a hoodie. So he stopped wearing hoodies altogether, started wearing button-downs, pressed collars, always with his ID visible. He adjusted his posture in public, lowered his voice around white women, stood still when police cruisers passed by. At 14, Elijah carried himself like a man who'd survived too much attention. "They'll never stop trying to make me look like a threat," he told Tamara one night. She just nodded. She had no more words for the world's cruelty. And then the letter came. It arrived in a crisp envelope, stamped with the seal of the Global Science Summit. Inside, an official invitation. Elijah Carr was formally invited as a keynote speaker at the Geneva-based summit, a gathering of the world's most elite minds in AI, ethics, and quantum computing. Topic: Redefining Brilliance, Inclusion in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. The same summit where, years earlier, his anonymous submission as EC Black had been shown with no name, no credit, no applause. Now they wanted him front and center. Elijah read the letter 3 times, then set it down. "They finally want me back in the room," he said. Dr. Harmon raised an eyebrow. "They want your story to heal their brand. But I'll be speaking," he replied, not apologizing. Tamara looked unsure. "Are you ready for that kind of stage again?" Elijah leaned back. This time they'll know exactly who's talking. He accepted the invitation. Security was tripled. His travel was scheduled under alias. Flight details were encrypted. Luggage inspected 6 times. And then the morning of the flight, as he stepped onto the jet bridge, a TSA agent hesitated while scanning his ticket. Another agent approached holding a second boarding pass.
"Mr. Carr?"
The agent asked. Elijah nodded. The agent glanced at the scanner. "That's strange. According to this, you already boarded 15 minutes ago." Elijah froze. Tamara's hand gripped his arm. Dr. Harmon stepped forward. "Run that name again. Full ID verification." The agent did. His brows furrowed. Elijah Carr. Seat 4A. Already scanned. A second Elijah had boarded, and whoever he was, he had a fake ID. Elijah's face and access to the summit. Elijah boards the flight to Geneva, unaware that someone else is already on board impersonating him. And the trap has already been set. The Geneva air was sharp, mountain crisp, but inside the World Innovation Forum, the energy was molten. The auditorium shimmered with soft lights and whispered anticipation. Screens 20 feet tall displayed rotating logos of powerful corporations, philanthropic sponsors, and international research coalitions. Cameras buzzed overhead. Every seat was full. On the main screen, a single name rotated in bold, minimalist font: Elijah Carr, keynote speaker. Redefining brilliance. Backstage, Elijah stood still. He wore a deep gray blazer, no tie, a crisp white shirt buttoned clean to the neck. On his wrist was the watch his grandfather once wore, analog, quiet, and stubbornly ticking, even when everything else froze. Tamara adjusted his collar with a mother's instinctive touch. Dr. Harmon reviewed the security protocols one last time, murmuring into a discreet earpiece. Vincent didn't say much. He just placed a hand on his son's shoulder, silent, anchoring. The event moderator stepped up to the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said in a polished European accent, "this year's keynote has redefined what it means to disrupt, not just technology, but the silence around who gets to be seen as a genius. Please welcome Elijah Carr." Applause erupted. Elijah walked out, each footstep echoing into global live streams. Thousands watched in real time. Millions would see the replay. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He just stepped to the mic, cleared his throat, and began. "I was once told to sit down because I asked too many questions," he said. "Then I was told to stay quiet when I had too many answers." The room shifted from applause to breathless silence. I'm not here today because I built the fastest algorithm or the smartest AI. I'm here because I survived what brilliance looks like when it wears the wrong skin. He paused. Faces leaned in. Being brilliant, while black, is not a celebration. It's a negotiation. Every room you enter has already decided what you're not allowed to be. The silence grew deeper. A few heads in the audience nodded. A few faces turned pale. I was erased. Not just from credit, from comfort, from childhood, from safety. I was made into a cautionary tale before I had a chance to write my own. He clicked a remote. Behind him, images appeared. Not of tech, but of the letters he received. The threats, the fake plagiarism reports, the court transcript where his innocence was proved line by line. They said I cheated. I didn't. They said I lied. I didn't. They said I shouldn't speak. But I am. A murmur passed through the audience. No one moved. I've been offered a dozen tech deals, 6 internships, 4 publishing contracts. They want to fund me now. He let the sentence hang. Then, sharp as a blade, I said no. Whispers. Audible surprise. Because you don't get to silence me, then shape me into your trophy. You don't get to break me, then brand me. He looked directly into the cameras now. Speaking not to the room but the world. This brilliance doesn't belong to you. It belongs to every black child told to tone it down. Every genius you didn't see because they weren't wearing the right school crest or speaking the right dialect. He clicked the remote again. Now the screen showed Code Black, his underground coding mentorship program. Faces of the kids, screenshots of their projects. Unpolished, revolutionary, fierce. This is where my funding goes. Not to your incubators, to the kids you throw away. A ripple of applause started, then it swelled. First a few rows, then all of them. The entire auditorium rose to its feet. But Elijah didn't soak it in. He nodded once, stepped back, and let the silence fall over the stage again, before closing. They tried to make me quiet. I decided to become impossible to ignore. He exited as the lights dimmed. The ovation didn't stop. Backstage, the line had already formed. Tech investors, media reps, academic chairs, all ready to apologize, fund, praise. Elijah declined them all. Dr. Harmon guided him toward a side hallway, but someone cut through the crowd. A girl, barely 12, with dark skin and a spiral braid tied back tight. She held a small, weathered notebook, the same kind Elijah had once carried. She approached with quiet determination. I watched your case, she said. I copied your code from the court transcripts. I solved one of the derivative puzzles you built. And I added something. She opened the notebook. It wasn't perfect, but it was brilliant. The girl looked up. I don't want to be famous. I just want to finish what you started. Elijah blinked. His voice caught for the first time in weeks. What's your name? He asked. She smiled, shy but defiant. Marley. And in that moment, Elijah knew the story had never been about one genius. It was about the fire being passed. As Elijah walks away, Marley's notebook is scanned into a government AI system, triggering a silent red flag. They found the next threat. The dawn came quietly over the campus of the Elijah Carr Institute of Innovation. Soft light filtered through the glass of the new building's atrium, and inside, young faces gathered, some bright with excitement, others cautious with history. In the chairs once reserved for kids told to sit down, these students now sat forward, notebooks open, code editors glowing. The institute was Elijah's vision realized, not just a building, but a movement. He had taken the phrase that once silenced him and turned it into a call to action. Sit down no longer meant shut up. It meant listen, learn, and then rise. Elijah walked through the hallways, stopping to watch a group of middle school students, presenting a smart glove designed to alert police officers when a weapon was drawn in high-risk neighborhoods. He smiled quietly. He remembered a time when his own questions had been dismissed, when teachers treated his intelligence as threat, rather than talent. Now he was guiding a new generation, teaching them how to build systems that protected their communities instead of excluding them. He stopped by a mural painted by students, a stylized image of his young self in silhouette, hand raised, fingers stretched, reaching for something just out of frame. Underneath read the motto, when told to sit down, stand up anyway. Across the country, the ripple effect was unmistakable. University curricula incorporated case studies about how Elijah's experience exposed structural bias in STEM education. Textbooks updated chapters, not just on AI and mathematics, but on the sociology of silence. Awards that once omitted black innovators were renamed in his honor. The Carr Innovation Medal. The sit-down stand-up moment became a riff in teacher conferences, in student orientations, in hashtag movements like Don't Tell Me Sit Down and Carry the Code. Classrooms where teachers once told the brightest black students to be quiet now encouraged them to offer up the answers, to lead the discussion, to redefine what brilliance looked like. But the legacy wasn't without its friction. The institute faced funding battles, as corporations that once ignored black talent suddenly offered diversity grants with fine print. Elijah declined many of them, insisting on independent governance and student-led research agendas. The board included mentors, students, and community leaders rather than donors, rewriting mission statements. Yet whispers circulated that the model would need to scale, fundraise more aggressively, partner with tech giants, and that brought risk. Some warned, once you accept their money, you risk becoming the story they want you to tell, not the story you need to live. Elijah's daily schedule was a blur of mentoring sessions, keynote speeches, and code review labs. He taught the first cohort himself, asking them, "What would you build if someone already decided you couldn't?" Occasionally he slowed his pace to reflect. Walking through the institute's outdoor courtyard, he traced geometric patterns in the paving shapes he once derived in his sleep, as a kid who had been told sit down. He thought of every time his hand was put down, every time his voice was hushed, every time his talent was framed as a problem. Then he thought of his students, voices rising, hands staying raised, ideas flowing. Parents watched the transformation. One mother approached him after a review session and said, "My son was told he was too loud in class. You taught him he could be the loudest voice in the room." Elijah nodded. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of decades. The institute's graduates began showing up in top research labs, startup founding teams, and policy think tanks. In rooms where black kids rarely got the floor, they now sat at the table, not just as guests, but as chairs. In teacher training seminars, Elijah's story became a module. Trainers asked educators, "What happens when you tell a student to sit down? What assumptions are you making about their worth?" Conversations shifted from discipline to possibility. Some districts changed their policies, referral systems were reviewed, gifted program eligibility criteria were audited for bias, and student-led coding tracks sprouted in places where silence had been the rule. Small rebellions became policy changes. The phrase "sit down, Elijah" no longer echoed, it reframed into a question: what happens when we invite Elijah to stand up? Still, for every win, the shadows followed. Sometimes investors reached out with offers too glossy to refuse. Sometimes media attention coalesced around his students in ways that mirrored his own story. They were praised, then scrutinized, then silenced. Some parents pulled their kids out of the institute, worried the attention made their children targets. Elijah had to balance visibility with safety, talent with traction, promise with protection. On nights when he lay awake in a hotel room, he heard the faint hum of servers processing student code, and the louder, older hum of people who still thought brilliance needed to be contained. Then one afternoon, a small article appeared in a regional newspaper. Subheadline: Institute under review, funding irregularities alleged. It seemed benign, but Elijah's stomach dropped. It triggered something inside him, a memory of how his own achievements had been reframed as threat. He pulled the article up, saw the quote from an anonymous donor, who claimed the Carr Institute lacked oversight. The language was similar. Polished, polite, skeptical. It was the syntax of doubt, the flavor of erasure. Elijah called Dr. Harmon. "They're circling," he said. "I know," she replied quietly. "But we built it to survive doubt." Still, he couldn't wipe the taste of betrayal. He remembered third-grade rooms where his hand had been lowered, where being smart was courageous and lonely. The institute had grown, the movement had grown, but so had the resistance. And as the legacy expanded, so did the danger of it being co-opted, distorted, or dismantled. Walking into his office, Elijah paused at the display of awards. The first plaque he ever received stood next to a photo of him on the stage in Geneva. Underneath he wrote a note: "For every Elijah told to sit down." He touched the plaque, and for the first time in months, he let himself feel the full weight of what it had taken, and what it would cost. He closed his eyes and made a promise: "I will not be silent. I will not be erased." And in classrooms across the country, the phrase "sit down" didn't carry shame anymore. It carried defiance. It carried power. It sparked mentorship circles, coding clubs, and handwritten posters. Kids who had been told to place their hands down now placed their laptops on desks and coded until midnight. They quoted him. They rewrote their own stories. Elijah watched them from the stage of his own legacy. He had built something that refused erasure, but as he stood there, proud and vigilant, a faint alarm sounded in his phone. It was a ping from the Institute's internal audit system. Unauthorized login attempt. The IP traced back to a familiar-feeling data node. With one last look at the awards wall, he swallowed and left his office. But as the movement grows, a new scandal brews, this time targeting Elijah's school model, and the founders of that model might be closer than anyone expected. No child should be punished for being brilliant. No voice should be silenced because of its skin. If this story made you feel something, if you've ever seen injustice and wanted to scream, type yes. If you believe in justice,